She's an acclaimed dietitian and the founder of the Gut Health Doctor. Dr. Megan Rossi is passionate about helping people heal their guts, and today she's sharing some of her tips and tricks to help us do the same. This is Advocate Now. Dr. Rossi, thank you so much for being here. And when people think of the gut, they often think of digestion, but really the gut affects every organ in the body, and a healthy gut is vital to living a healthy and happy life. So in terms of healing our guts, what's the best way to start?
Yeah, look, I think it's absolutely spot on that you've highlighted. It's not just about digestion, it's about things like our mental health, our immune health, our skin health, etc. And in terms of the scientific research, I think one of the fundamental elements of gut health is these trillions of bacteria in our gut. So treating them with the right nutrition and their favorite nutrients, which essentially come from plants, seems to be the most evidence-based way to maximize and support your gut.
Well, many of us are very aware of the foods that we put into our bodies, but ironically, we're out of sync with what happens after. And we can sometimes ignore what our bodies are telling us, as you mentioned, how it can affect the skin. So for example, acne could be a sign of an unhealthy gut. What are some common signs or other signs or symptoms of an unhealthy gut, would you say?
It's a great question and quite a challenging one for us to kind of diagnose an unhealthy gut through, simple tests. It's different from things like kidney disease and heart disease, where actually there is a test. You get your heart levels checked, you get your kidney function tested. Whereas with our gut, because it's so complex and it's relatively quite a new scientific discovery in terms of its novelty and its far-reaching effects, there is no single measure, annoyingly, to assess your gut health. But I have developed a bit of a questionnaire, 10 questions, which people can complete completely free online. And it helps people rate their gut health from a scale of 0 to 20. And the types of questions that it asks includes things like, yes, are you getting digestive symptoms? But also things like, are you on certain medications? How stressed are you? How often do you get the cold and flu and things like that? Because we know all of these factors really can impact and determine, I guess, where our gut health currently sits.
And I recently learned that around 70% of immune cells reside in the gut. So how does the gut affect the immune system?
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I think, although we've known that statistic for quite some time, the COVID epidemic, really did bring more light into the importance of supporting our gut for our immune system, because they live, hand in hand. We've got all of these immune cells in our gut, and therefore those trillions of microorganisms, which people may have heard of as our gut microbiome, they strongly interact with our immune system. So certainly see people who've got better gut health also have more resilient immune systems. So things like, lower risk of the cold and flu, even lower risk of becoming unwell if they did get COVID during the pandemic. So, there is a real wealth of evidence around those two and connecting them. In terms of, I guess, the elements, like I did mention about the plants being quite important, and I think people are like, plants are very boring. I've been there, done that. But I guess there is a new area of research which highlights this concept of diverse ranges of plants, and I call it the Super Six. So Sonia, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you what the Super Six are, but actually it's quite important that you think of your own diet across the day, and are you getting in the Super Six? Because each different category of these plants seems to provide different gut bacteria with fertilizer to do different things. So if you're cutting out one of these Super Six groups, then actually you might be missing some important skills for hormone regulation or vitamin production, or the types of bacteria that communicate with our brain to support things like our mental health. So the science really does highlight these Super Six. And for those who are thinking, okay, well, what are the Super Six? So we've got our whole grains, that can be things like oats, quinoa, barley, etc. We've got our fruit, we've got our veggies, we've got our legumes, so things like your chickpeas, butter beans, etc. You've got your herbs and your spices, and your nuts and your seeds. So thinking about your own diet, try and get something in from the Super Six most days. Now, I know that some people choose to go on different diets where they might want to cut out one of these Super Six. And I think at the end of the day, everyone is unique, and I'm all for supporting, the dietary choices people want to make. What we are learning is that some of these diets that do cut out these whole food like groups actually you might achieve perhaps your goal is weight loss in the short term, but actually in the long term, what we're seeing is this rebound effect where you not only regain the weight, but actually you could put on extra. And that's because our gut bacteria, if they're starved of one of these categories, can have a really strong impact on our metabolism. So they help regulate things like ghrelin and leptin, which are our appetite hormones.
And tying that into the immune system, eating a diet that's full of plants and whole foods, or the super six, as you refer to them, if that can decrease your risk of contracting viruses and the common flu, if you do get sick, can that same type of diet help you heal faster as well?
Absolutely. So there is data out there to show that if you do get the cold and flu and you do support your diet with those super six and really try and nourish, including things with like vitamin C and garlic in particular, actually you might lower the duration of that cold and flu.
And I know you mentioned the super six, but if you could narrow it down, is there one superfood or incredibly powerful food that you feel like everyone should add in?
So I can't say that there is a superfood out there, but I think a category which gets neglected quite a lot, despite there being a wealth of evidence behind them, as well as them being quite accessible for people, is the legume family. So things like chickpeas, butter beans, black beans, kidney beans, these have actually been shown to help improve our longevity. So happier and healthier years. They've also been shown a link to, anyway, delaying natural menopause as well, because of they feed the gut bacteria. They contain a specific type of chemical. People might have heard these words called prebiotics. So essentially these are fertilizers for the gut bacteria. So we know that legumes are a brilliant source of them. So nourishing the bacteria with this fertilizer, we think that has been helped to regulate estrogen, and therefore that's the mechanism behind delaying the natural menopause. So I think if everyone could just focus on adding some of them into their diet, and you don't need to, slave away in the kitchen and do soaking for hours and stuff like that. Just the canned version. If you are worried about things like flatulence as a bit of a side effect, because your body does take a bit of time to adjust to that extra gas, because the bacteria get really excited and they produce a range of health chemicals when they eat it. They also produce a little bit of gas, which is nothing to be afraid of. But obviously, if you go from very little legumes to a lot, your bacteria have this frenzy, this party, they binge eat on it, like we would if we were on a diet and then faced with all this chocolate, and they can produce extra gas. So the concept very much is going slow and steady with introducing legumes. So triple rinsing legumes of the canned version under the tap can help reduce the flatulence effect, as well as starting out with just maybe 1 tablespoon every day. Second week, 2 tablespoons, third week, 3 tablespoons. So do that and you'll be symptom free when you get to enjoy your legumes.
Okay, work your way up. And as we're talking about how gut health affects the body, I mean, there's evidence that gut health affects your mental health as well. And I read that a Mediterranean diet, for example, could help with managing depression. So what can you tell me about that?
My research colleagues back in Australia did this incredible research. It's called the SMILES trial. Any other sort of research nerds out there, look it up. I've got it in the book as well. And essentially what they did is took people who had moderate severe depression, randomized half of them to the Mediterranean diet, which was loaded with all different plants, and the other half just got befriending type of counseling to act as a control group. They followed either the interventions for 12 weeks. They came back and reassessed their mental health and found those in the diet group, that Mediterranean full of the plant group, 32% of them had a significant improvement in their depression scores, which would have classified them as no longer clinically depressed. In the control group, that was only about 8%. But I mean, I always like to make the disclosure that everyone stayed on their antidepressant medication. So if someone's listening to this who is struggling with depression, I would say never ever go cold turkey with medications. But be empowered by this information that as an additional therapy, you certainly can get plenty of clinically significant health gains. And perhaps over time, with the support of your prescribing doctor, you might look to reduce it if that's right for you.
Absolutely. So interesting. Dr. Rossi, thank you so much for all of your insights today and for spending some time with us. We appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocate.com and advocatechannel.com.